So in a 10-minute video, this time I won't be talking. Someone else will be. Thanks, Super Recognizer.
Is it the story of the soldier and the hunchback? The connection between the worlds of intelligence and the occult should go without saying, but there are many things to say. In England, it's a very well-established fact dating back to Elizabeth I and her court astrologer, Dr. John Dee, the original 007 who coined the term the British Empire. It is equally well established that Aleister Crowley worked for British intelligence. Although his intelligence role is thought to be much more modest and peripheral than Dr. Dee's, it is generally accepted as plausible, sometimes presented as established fact, that Crowley had enough influence to have his proposed anti-swastika power symbol, the V for victory, adopted by Churchill himself. Crowley's connections were to naval intelligence, and Churchill was the First Lord of the Admiralty during World War I, so he would have been Crowley's direct superior when Crowley was loudly pretending to be anti-British in New York. In the States, the Office of Naval Intelligence is associated with the fake counterculture of the Laurel Canyon scene, which is also associated with the V sign. So, it's accepted that there were very few degrees of separation between these luminaries, but no suggestion of a meeting, which is a bit surprising since they had rather a lot in common. Churchill is also known as a drug addict, for one thing. He was a Freemason, naturally, but had you heard that Churchill was initiated as a druid? Did you know he had a reputation for being psychic? His intuition supposedly saved his own life or the lives of others on 3 separate occasions. So, Churchill was rocking some unexpectedly Crowleyan attributes. Meanwhile, Crowley told a friend he felt responsible for the sinking of the Lusitania. He was working his occult contacts to persuade the Germans to be belligerent, while Churchill took more concrete steps to make such an accidental drowning of neutral passengers much more likely, as part of their shared mission to embroil America in Europe's Great War. Their efforts appear to have paid off, but Crowley's influence on the course of the war may go...
Quick note, if you seriously want to look into Aleister Crowley, look into the Bush family and the Crowley Connection and the bloodline connection between them.
Further than that, he is said to have led a divination ritual in 1910 at the request of another Admiralty agent, Commander Marston, which predicted that wars with Germany and Turkey would begin within 5 years, and that both of those countries would be destroyed. Turned out to be pretty accurate. In the novel Moonchild, Crowley's avatar Simon If dismisses everyone who thinks they know why World War I started and says it was, quote, I who made it, explaining that it is a necessary catalyst for the emergence of the new Aeon. Even more relevant are Crowley's short stories featuring Simon If, as a sleuth who not only solves crimes, but sometimes colludes with journalists and law enforcement to cover up the truth, promising, I will arrange with the consulate for secrecy. He concludes another case by musing that they should install the murderer as Minister for Education. It's implied he could perhaps actually arrange for this, as a revered senior member of the local elite secret society, the Hemlock Club. Elsewhere, Simon If has enough pull with the Admiralty to borrow a top-secret advanced vehicle just so he can create a puzzle for his friend. In short, Simon If has the sensibility of Crowley and the connections of Churchill. The suspicious accuracy of Crowley's World War I prediction is nothing compared to a Simon If tale of high political intrigue titled A Sense of Incongruity, which features a plot against America by what was, at the end of World War I, when the story was written, a very unlikely alliance of Austria and Japan, which turned out to be a big bullseye, Hitler being from Austria. But what if I told you this story ends after Dr. Nagasaki is destroyed by a new and, quote, intensely radioactive weapon? Which is, of course, precisely what happens on the last page of World War II. 5 years is one thing. 20 to 25 years ahead of time is quite another. Just how psychic was this guy supposed to be? Or, if the script for the next war was set that far in advance...
Now, before he goes on, I want to add that this is to do with the unseen world, and there's a lot more to this story, and it has to do with rituals, and how they can manifest and bring into this world negative beings, which they then become, demons.
Why would a supposedly lowly agent like Crowley know all about it? The editor...
Also, demons can see the future and the past, because they're spirits, but they're high-level spirits. And essentially, if we had our pineal gland, which he's going into about the psychic connection, so I'm not saying he's not wrong about, like, he had teachings to basically open up his pineal gland a bit more so that he could use his psychic abilities. That's still plausible. However, the ever connection to it is the demonic connection. Now, I'm not saying he was possessed or anything, but I'm just saying that it is another plausible explanation as to what's going on, because that stuff is very real. They show it in your movies, but it's very real.
William Breeze is startled, obviously, and describes Crowley as, quote, eerily prescient, which is really another way of saying coincidence theory. Could there be a more direct connection here? Mr. Breeze also says it should awaken the sense of incongruity in any attentive reader, which is curious since, in the story, Simon If initially exposes the plot by noticing a telltale facial feature, quote, that only grows on one family face on the planet, end quote, thus recognizing a famous European aristocrat who's slumming it undercover in New York on a secret mission to start a war. Simon If's sense of incongruity is awakened by facial recognition. Naturally, Simon If prefers his heroic role to remain secret, asking, do you want me pilloried as a meddlesome Matty in the next number of Life? Interesting, since meddlesome Matty was the phrase Teddy Roosevelt used to refer to the U.S. getting involved in foreign conflicts, which is exactly the mission Crowley had been secretly working to accomplish in New York. So he was writing about his own intelligence work. The question is, was he also an aristocrat in disguise? Relevant to this question is one of the non-Simon If stories titled Colonel Pacton's Brother. It features a group of spiritualist grifters attempting to con the visiting Earl of Grandchester, a character who is said to be based on Everard Fielding, an investigator of seances and trance mediums, who was also the man who recruited Crowley for secret work in 1914, according to Richard Spence. Their plan, the grifters, is foiled when it turns out that they were talking to someone else all along, a character said to be based on Crowley, who was posing as the aristocrat. One conspirator reproaches the other that they did every kind of detailed research about their mark, but never bothered to look at his picture. Ask yourself, have you done every kind of detailed research about these people except for looking at their pictures? Is that something people can be counted on to miss? As Crowley wrote elsewhere, investigation of spiritualism makes a capital training ground for Secret Service work. One soon gets up to all the tricks. There's much more of interest in Crowley's short fiction, but for now, I'll just note that one of the centerpiece myth arc episodes of the Simon If in America collection, the Pasquani Puzzle, is about a doppelganger. This book is about a celebrity traveling undercover who also has a doppelganger, but it was written by a different Winston Churchill. So, never mind. The respectable journalism about Crowley's intelligence career tends to conclude that his claimed involvements were not only plausible, but understated, the question being how much. It is, of course, easy and reasonable to assume that Simon If represents Crowley indulging his fantasy superego rather than venting his true autobiography in fictionalized form. But what if he was 0 degrees of separation from power? What would Prime Minister Aleister Crowley do? Well, one of Churchill's signal accomplishments as peacetime Prime Minister was the repeal of the Witchcraft Act, which had existed in various forms since the days of Elizabeth and John Dee, and was used during the war to jail a medium who had channeled classified information. Churchill expressed outrage, and within a few years of the war's end,
that case is very true, and there's another case similar that another person did do exactly the same thing and got locked up. So there's the two cases of psychics being locked up because they saw a thing happening and then it happened.
And
they didn't want you to know about it
forms of
to do it in the
magic
military.
Were fully legalized. Mission accomplished?
Secret missions.
Whose mission? So, on the one hand, the notorious drug-fiend spy writer who was king of the magicians and precisely predicted both world wars. And on the other hand, the psychic druid drug addict who was king of the spies and who was a primary showrunner for both world wars. And they were the same age, born within a year of each other.
They are related.
And, oh yeah, last but certainly not least,
the family
Crowley liked to dress up as Churchill. So much so that this photo exists. I mean, sure, everyone likes to make fun of their boss, but there are no candid photos of Aleister Crowley until he was an old man. All his other pictures are very posed. Even the goofy ones have the intensity of yoga postures. He must have really resonated with the tribal icon of the British bulldog. Is it the story of the soldier and the hunchback? Is it the mystery of charisma? Is it manufacturing charisma? Or is it the story of the eagle with two heads? An exoteric sun head and an esoteric moon head? This is a prominent symbol of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the school that Aleister Crowley cut his magical teeth in. But they didn't invent the two-headed eagle. That's a very old symbol. The world's oldest symbol, according to Google. But the Golden Dawn incorporate the alchemical sun and moon. Two heads, two faces, a controlled opposition, playing both sides. Churchill, ruler of the day world of Parliament and a captain of recorded history. And Crowley, lord of the dark rivers, master of the colonial subconscious, synthesizing sorcerous traditions from every...
Sorry to cut you off there, mate, a second. But this is kind of how it works, really, because the Pope has a helping double, not in a literal sense of looking, but as in he does the dark work for him, where he does the supposed good work, and vice versa. Just saying that there is other connections to like how these things operate, and the Vatican are very, very connected to this
corner of the empire. It's just that on top of all of this, these two really look alike. This resemblance is remarkable on its own. A remarkable coincidence, if that's what it is, and how much more of a coincidence that they are the same age and everything else. If this is a coincidence, it is analogous to the great coincidence of the apparently identical size of the sun and the moon. If this is a coincidence, consider it an eclipse.
Interesting, because these family, they do look alike, a lot of them, which is why we were saying about the faces and stuff, and you can tell a lot by their faces. Could be, though. I'm not saying he's wrong, you know. Could Aleister Crowley really have been Winston Churchill? Interesting. How secret group Freemasons have kept grip on Britain for 200 years. The names of royalty, statesmen, judges, military, top brass, bishops, MPs have been found in secret archive. Winston Churchill doing the V. Think about it. It's not what you think it is. The huge influence Freemasons had in ruling British society for almost 200 years has finally been revealed. Well, it's not, you know, if you've got eyes to see, you can clearly see it's been, you know, it's not exactly hard to see. You know, architecturally, anyway. The names of royalty, statesmen, judges, yeah, I've said that, been found on a secret archive with lists 2 million Freemasons. The Senate records from 1733 to 1923 are set to be made available to the public for the first time. When was this article made? Because that could explain something else. Where is it? No, 2015. Oh, interesting. Okay. That's where that comes from in the wiki. They show King Edward the Seventh, Edward the Eighth, and George the Fifth are all Freemasons. Military leaders: Duke of Wellington, Lord Kitchener, members of the clandestine group. Yeah. Oscar Wilde, talk about him earlier. Paedophile. Captain Robert Falcon Scott. Others include music legends Gilbert and Sullivan. Captain Robert Scott, England cricket captain. I mean, it goes into all walks of life: football, cricket, all sports. You know, it makes you question everything. More than 5,500 police officers found of military fatigues, idiot. 170 judges, 169 MPs, 16 bishops, an Indian prince, businessman Harry Selfridge, Thomas Bernardo, builder of Thomas Telford, and thousands of engineers who made Britain a world industrial power. I get it, without these people we wouldn't have the world we live in, but because they do good things, but then a lot of the stuff they do is very bad. A lot of the reasoning they do good things is because later on they want to do very bad things. And philanthropy is a massive key in understanding what these agendas. So like I said, a lot of these people are evil, and the most evilest people in the world are the most, on paper, the kindest. But it's not true. There you go, there's another sign. Pedophilia is a requirement for UK ruling elite. By Thomas Muller of the New Nationalist. Case by case, the evidence builds not only of psychopaths populate the UK's power structure, but that often enough, being a paedophile has been an additional requirement. 33-degree Masonry, alright? It's connected to Masonry. The entire ruling hierarchy is rife with this crowd, and it is a long-standing British tradition. I believe paedophiles are put into high places not just because of their psychopathy, but because they can be compromised and controlled by the cabal. There is an element of this in the US power structure as well. Whistleblowers and victims who go up against paedophile rings frequently end up dead. Due to the change in legislation 2009 by Jack Straw, it is now illegal for children in care to speak out if they are victims of abuse. Really? I didn't know that. That's disgusting. Jimmy Savile proved to be very prolific paedophile. Now Savile, you know, connections to Savile and the Queen. Come on, man. Savile was knighted by the Queen, knighted by the Vatican, and all about the Vatican and the knighthoods, right? Like I said, you got to think about these things more clearly about what's going on in front. You know, why these great people are not so great, and why they just, you know, they're part of the deception. Spent time with Margaret Thatcher. She was evil. Checkers on several occasions. Was close friends with Prince Charles, paedophile. Murdered Princess Diana. Spent time with him alone. No doubt. He was also boasted that he had police pals who would protect him from child abuse claims. I mean, this is it. I mean, the police and the laws are all put in place to help protect Freemasonry and the brothers. You know, yes, there are odd, you know, individuals out there that do it by themselves, but the biggest prolific group of all time, and again I'll say to you that there is one of lodge in every single town. Do not see it as a fraternity or a place to get pissed. It has darker agendas attached to it, and it relates to paedophilia and children. You know, the children are the future, and this is exactly why I'm doing this video, because we need to protect them. from the vaccines, protect them from the lies, protect them from the paedophiles, the government. They're not our friends. Technology is not our friend when it's manipulated and controlled by evil. So, famous politician Cyril Smith proved to be a prolific paedophile. Smith was only one of a number of alleged high-profile child abusers within Westminster, said to have been named in a 40-page dossier submitted to the Horn Office by the late campaigner Tory MP Geoffrey Dickens in 1983. Home Secretary at the time, Leon Britton, top-ranking politician to this day, lost the file containing evidence of paedophiles and... Oh, conveniently, didn't you, Leon Britton? Paedophile cover-up. Kincora Boys, home-linked politician, kills self after answering questions pertaining to paedophilia at the home. Guilty. Ken Livingstone, Dr. Livingstone, I presume, probably one. Ken Livingstone had said that MI5 orchestrated paedophilia events in Kincora Boys' home in order to blackmail politicians. MI5, the government, they're all controlled and manipulated by sick individuals, paedophiles that need outing, exposed. There are a number of paedophile links to the British royal family. No shit. Prince Charles was not only a close friend with Jimmy Savile, as we said, but close friends with convicted paedophile priest, and was also friends with alleged paedophile Arthur C. Clarke. Oh, another prominent individual. Royal Valet foreman George Smith claimed to have been raped by Michael Fawcett, don't know who he is, top royal servant to Prince Charles, okay, and also claimed that he once caught Prince Charles and his same servant in bed together. A royal butler took his paedophile victims to tea with Queen Mother. Paedophile, man. Like I said, look into the stuff into Belgium, home of Bow. The paedophile ring in there, and the little Switzerland. Seriously, that's where the origins of the Thousand Paws of Light come from. From a fucking place, one of the castles there, mansions. With a fucking massive organisation of child fucking sickness. Prince Andrew was close friends with a now convicted paedophile, Edwina Currie, a top-ranking politician. During and after the Thatcher era, wrote in her autobiography that Peter Morrison, now deceased personal private secretary to Margaret Thatcher, was a noted pederast, and admitted as much then Conservative Party chairman Norman Tebbit. An as yet unnamed Labour peer is being investigated by police after 12 men alleged allegations of historical child abuse against him. Yeah, the allegations go and they come out, but then nothing happens because the same people at the top are covering for everything. They eventually what they'll do is they'll have a scapegoat, or they'll have someone to take the blame within the brotherhood, and that'll be that. Move on. We need to stand up to these people. We need a backbone. We need to fucking literally go back to lynching them. They're everywhere. Too many of them now. Ben Fellows claims to have been grouped by top UK politician Ken Clarke at the age of 15. Andrew Lloyd Webber puts his tongue down his throat when he was 13. Well, he's clear as gay as fuck. So there's no surprise there that gay people like young boys, isn't it, people? Also claims he was doing drugs at a party at Ether Ranthan's house as a minor. Pizzagate scandal covered up. Member of Parliament Simon, it's got a Polish name, I'm gonna say it, Way, I know it ends in a way, Dunjue, I don't know, was warned by top Conservative MP not to challenge Leon Britton over paedophilia dossier. I mean, it's just, it's continuous. So I'll definitely link these up. Check it out yourself, read it all. It's just an example, and there's so much of it. And I've showed this article before in my other video, but this is more relevant now. How I'm trying to show you the connections and the repetition and the evilness of these people. But there's 2 Freemason lodges set up in Westminster, which will continue to operate. So you have paedophile Freemason lodges operating in Westminster. Next. So how many Freemasons are there? And any of you think you're in joining this fraternity, just know where you're going, know what you're getting into. They will come to you if you do well at schools. They will come to you if you're born into rich families, or you've got no choice in those cases sometimes. Like I say, because you are molested. So under the United Grand Lodge of England, there are over 200,000 Freemasons. There are Grand Lodges in Ireland, which cover both Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland, and Scotland, which have a combined total of approximately 1,500 members. Worldwide, approximately there are 6 million Freemasons. Now, please bear in mind that there are, as I keep saying, a lodge in every single town in this country and around the world. They got to be stopped. They're the ones. They're the enemy. They're the ones doing everything. And so, going on that previous article earlier about how certain things have been released, let's say, they could explain why this exists now. An A to Z of notable Freemasons for time. And it's everyone and anyone and everybody in prominent and high places. Businessmen, politicians, lawyers, publishers, comedians, actors, singers, statesmen, sportsmen, you name it, kings, royals, presidents, journalists, treasurers. I mean, come on, baseball, and I'll just show you that it goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, and it continues all the way. And if you don't think that this whole world is manipulated by these people, for time, and how they're all in it together to bring in a new world order, which they've been trying to do for the last 200, 300 years after infiltrating us and other places. You got to stop and question things, people, please.